We're four friends with hot takes on food media.
And we're here to review and recap all kinds of food shows in bite-sized seasons.
Plus, virtual potlucks, cooking adventures, and food memes.
Welcome to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
Hi, I'm Amanda.
Hey, it's Justine.
And it's me, Meg.
Welcome back to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes. We had a little bit of a holiday break, but we're back in action now. You may have also heard a bonus episode from us last time where Meg was interviewing the Butcher Girls for Reddit Talks. Yeah, let us know how much you like those and we'll keep doing them.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna get our brains back into what we're doing here after the long break. We are doing a potluck episode today. This season, we have been covering Taste the Nation with Padma Lakshmi, Season 1. In Taste the Nation, award-winning cookbook author Padma Lakshmi goes on a journey across the United States exploring the rich and diverse food cultures of various immigrant groups and seeking out the people who have shaped what American food is today. Now it's time to talk about the food that shaped us in our Taste the Nation themed potluck episode. So if you've previously heard our potlucks, we usually cook the recipes from the shows we covered. But this time, staying true to the theme of the show, we wanted to deep dive into our own personal histories. But as with previous potlucks, we do not know what each other has come up with.
No clue.
We're not intimately familiar with each other's family recipes.
Meg's gonna go first.
That's me.
And I'm Meg.
All right, so I am sharing a recipe from my mom's side of the family, and I'm calling it a, quote, Lithuanian recipe, but I'll circle back to that in a minute. It might not be terribly Lithuanian, but my mom has always called this Christmas bread or Easter bread because her family would eat this bread during those holidays. I think maybe it's easier to just call it Jesus bread. If there's a Jesus-related holiday, you can eat this bread. But one reason why I call this Lithuanian is just because my mother's family is Lithuanian. All four of her grandparents immigrated to the U.S. from Lithuania in the early 1900s, and her parents were both first-generation Americans, so very Lithuanian family. And as she was growing up, her parents would always buy this bread from a local neighborhood bakery. I asked my mom, was it a Lithuanian bakery? Was this a big Lithuanian neighborhood? And she said, no, she thinks it was probably actually a German bakery. So it's maybe a sort of amalgamation of several European countries' recipes. So in case you don't know where Lithuania is, it's a northern European country between Poland, Latvia, and Belarus. So, you know, one of those cold northern countries. I see a lot of similarity between, say, Lithuanian recipes and Russian recipes. And her family never actually baked this bread themselves. They would always buy it from the bakery. And my mom developed this recipe herself many years later when I was a young child. So through trial and error, she sort of recreated this recipe that she was familiar with. And even though her family didn't really ever bake this, her dad was kind of the cook of their household, and he did a lot of foraging and hunting for meals that they ate when she was growing up. So some things that he foraged for were like mushrooms. He hunted turtles, which they made into turtle soup sometimes. Yeah. Crawdads, rabbits, catfish, stuff like that. He did develop a mashed potato recipe that I have to say is very, very good. I've made it several times myself for Thanksgiving. But going back to the bread, so this is a sweet yeasted bread. So it's kind of your typical bread dough, but it also has candied fruits and candied peel in it, along with golden raisins. And you braid it together to make this nice braided loaf, and you bake it. And on top, you put an almond glaze with sliced almonds. And I'm not sure when I first had this bread. It's just kind of always been a part of my growing up experience. we usually had it around Christmas and just sometimes Easter. So it sort of didn't feel like Christmas unless you had this loaf of Christmas bread on Christmas morning. So my mom would typically make it the day before. And then after we opened presents under the tree on Christmas morning, we'd all have some nice warm bread and you just serve it sliced with maybe some butter. So that's basically the Christmas bread. It's really good. I mean, I love it. It's bread. I don't want to oversimplify it. But, you know, I don't have a whole lot to say about the recipe itself. If you've made yeasted bread before, there's not really any surprises here, except that in the dough there is mashed potatoes, just boiled mashed potatoes, not you know.
Okay, see, that's something interesting there.
Yes. And this is an important point for my mom because she feels like this is kind of the key ingredient. She could never quite get the recipe how she wanted when she was developing it. And she was like, well, there's something missing. There's something that makes this bread very soft, but dense and moist. And so she decided to add potato. So essentially it's a potato bread. And the potato really is key. I've never had a version of this bread that was dry. It's always very nice and soft and tasty and chewy. I really enjoy it. And we made this together, my mom and I, this Christmas, which was very nice. She came over to my house and we baked bread and it was really fun. And it was especially lovely because didn't get to see family last year because of the pandemic. So it was nice to do that again. And I did make it on my own last year during the pandemic, but had a real hard time finding candied fruit that I wanted. And all I could find was whole candied cherries that they make that horrible green color. Have you seen these? They're like bright green cherries. So who knows what sort of chemical alchemy they've undergone to be this green color.
Necromancy.
Yeah, they kill the cherries and then they bring them back from the dead.
Makes sense.
I think that our batch of bread this year turned out especially well. I don't want to pat myself on the back too much, but I think it was very nice, maybe because I had all the ingredients this year, unlike last year. Although it does take a while because you have two separate proofs. You make the bread and you knead it, and then you let it prove for at least an hour. And then you divide it into separate pieces, braid it, and let them prove in their braided loaf form for another proving cycle. Then you bake it. So it's about 3 hours start to finish. It takes a while. But in the meantime, my mom and I watched The Muppet Christmas Carol. So
Yes, best Christmas Carol.
So it was a very nice Christmas celebration. Yes, absolutely the best Christmas Carol. I agree. Pretty much the only stumbling block we had making the recipe this time was that we didn't have sliced almonds. All we had was whole almonds. And I thought, well, I have a mandolin, which seems very dangerous, but we decided to try it. And it worked out great, actually. I was surprised that it worked, and B, that no one lost a finger.
I'm really glad this wasn't another, and then Meg had to go to the ER story.
Yeah, no 7 stitches this time for me, fortunately. But yeah, so I'm not entirely sure whether this is traditionally a Lithuanian recipe. If anyone's listening in Lithuania, I'd love to hear what you have to say. I did look up some other definitely traditional Lithuanian recipes to see what's out there. Something that my mom has eaten before and enjoyed is called Coogula. I'll apologize up front for not knowing how to pronounce any of these things. But Coogula is a potato pudding that usually has like pork or bacon in it. They also like to have beet soup. It's essentially borscht, nothing too different from borscht in there. There's also a pierogi type food called kapelinai, which means zeppelin, because they look like these zeppelins when you make them. And one recipe that I really want to make, and that my mom has agreed that we should make it together sometime, is called grubukai. And they're little mushroom-shaped spice cookies. And they are so cute. They look like mushrooms. You frost them so that they look like a little mushroom cap. I bought a specialty mushroom cookie mold online. Apologies to Alton Brown, who hates single-use appliances. And this is maybe the most single-use appliance I have ever purchased. So, mushroom cookies. But yeah, those are a few Lithuanian recipes. My mom says that she often consults a Facebook group called our mom's Lithuanian recipes. So
Cute.
maybe that's a good place to go. Okay, I'm going to send you some photos of the bread.
Oh.
Ooh.
These making of photos were actually from previous years because I was bad about taking photos during the making of process, but I've shared a couple pictures of the unbaked braided loaves as they're proving. There's a picture of me in a Santa hat. That was my loaves from last year with the giant green cherries in them. And then the final photos are the 2 loaves that my mom and I made this year.
Wow. These look store-bought.
Yeah. I would have thought
The
that
highest
was from a
compliment.
bakery.
Thank you.
Wow.
Oh.
Wow. Hollywood handshake.
Something kind of fun about these that I think makes them especially Christmassy as opposed to Eastery is that you put the almond glaze on top and then you put it back in the oven for about 10 to 15 minutes to let it finish baking. And in that final baking time, the icing gets this nice sort of crackly texture, and it kind of looks like snow on top of the bread.
Yeah.
So it's
I can
very
see
wintry
that.
in my mind.
So, what dry fruits did you use for this year then?
It was that sort of mixed jar, not jar, but one of those containers you can get that has the candied peel. So I think it had orange and lemon peel. It has green peel. I don't want to call it lime because I think it might just be dyed orange peel, perhaps. It has little pieces of pineapple, and it also has some red candied cherries. So it's that everything mix that you might find at the store.
I can't believe you made those almond slivers yourself.
I know, don't they look good?
They look perfect. And no injuries. Very, very
No
impressive.
injuries.
Fancy.
But yeah, so that's a bread that I make most years. It's very nice memories of making it with my mom and my mom teaching me. And if any of y'all want to hear from my mom directly, I recorded a side dish episode with her titled Meg Makes Claire's Angel Food Cake. So you can hear some of my mom's expertise directly. She's a hobbyist recipe developer and has won a lot of recipe cooking contests. So she has a lot of knowledge to impart.
So good. I'm back in the Christmas spirit.
Yes.
Are you gonna make it every year? Is this your bread now?
I typically eat it every year, one way or another. If someone's not making it, then I will probably take it upon myself to make it because I just love it. And it doesn't really feel like Christmas if I don't have Christmas bread. All right, that's my mom's Lithuanian bread. Justine, what did you make?
Okay. In the tradition of going overboard, I made 2 things.
Excellent.
And also the tradition of really going overboard, I have prepared a PowerPoint presentation. Disclaimer, I don't speak French. I made a Tourtiere and Hermits.
Do you mean Hermit? No, I can't speak French either. I'm just being dumb.
No. Those ones, not French. First thing, yes, French. I made a meat pie. And you're like, Justine, wait.
Justine, I'm
That's
pretty
your
sure
brain's
you're
doing that.
vegan.
Justine, you're vegan. Yes, I made a vegan and gluten-free meat pie. I did use a recipe from the internet, but I had to make this dish. I was told this was the dish to make. And I'm like, I've never heard of this. And they're like, no, this one. This is, yes, you're doing this. And I'm like, okay. I'm dropping in the presentation, so if you all could go, not jump ahead, but go with me slide by slide.
So who told you that this was the one to be made?
Both my parents. My mom first, and then my dad confirmed.
Wow, it's an actual PowerPoint presentation.
Are you going to share this for the
Yeah,
listeners?
I think I will put it in blog form for our listeners to
Nice.
enjoy. But we're gonna go on a journey together. So yes, Tourtiere and Hermit cookies, French Canadian New England food made vegan and gluten free by Justine Gendron. Okay,
It finally loaded. Okay.
so yeah, I set examples. You can see the final dish first on slide 2. There's my meat pie. It is there. I'm going to get into the whole process of it, but I'd never made a pie before, okay? So I don't know. This was a Christmas miracle. What is a tourtiere? Yes, from Wikipedia, because this is the best example, because I'd never heard of it. Tourtiere is a French-Canadian meat pie dish originating from the province of Quebec, usually made with minced pork, veal, or beef, and potatoes. Wild game is sometimes used. A traditional part of the Christmas réveillon, Christmas Eve celebration, and New Year's Eve meal in Quebec. Tourtiere is not exclusive to Quebec. It is a traditional French-Canadian dish served throughout Canada and the bordering areas of the United States. In the New England region of the U.S.
That's where you're from.
Right, especially in Maine, Rhode Island, Vermont, New Hampshire, and Massachusetts, late 19th and early 20th century immigrants from Quebec introduced the dish. There's no one correct filling. The meat depends on what is regionally available. In coastal areas, fish such as salmon is commonly used, whereas pork, beef, rabbit, and game are often included inland. The name derives from the vessel in which it's originally cooked. And then I included a picture of a traditional. Mm-hmm. Next slide. As you can see, Osias Gendron immigrated from Canada to Central Falls, Rhode Island. He came over in 1872, naturalized in 1903. So I've got the person, the time, the correct place, evidence.
Yeah, I wouldn't believe you otherwise. I'd be like, Justine, lies.
Providing physical evidence. Next slide. I call this A Tradition Begins. Leonidas Gendron, Osias's first child, was born May 20th, 1901 in Central Falls, Rhode Island, and he would become a baker. His first son, Paul, my Pepe, would also work as a baker for some time. And they all made meat pies for the holidays and hermits for the locals. And I have included scans from Leonidas, who would be my great-grandfather. I recently acquired a bunch of his recipe books for the bakeries. And I also saw on all of his census papers that he was baker in a bakery. And my parents also confirmed that basically he was like a freelance baker. And he would go around in whatever shops are available and open and make a lot of things. And you can see that there is a... I was clued in on hermits also because he had 4 different hermits recipes.
Oh.
I never heard of either of these things.
Baking is in your blood.
So next slide 7. What is a hermit? It's basically a cross between a gingerbread cookie and a fruitcake. And it is said that it's called a hermit because it could survive without refrigeration.
The classic defining feature of a hermit.
I have also included a link to a Bon Appetit article about hermit cookies if you'd like to learn more. And then Chris Morocco's got his own take on it, of course. Oh yeah, and I included pictures of my Meme and Pepe working at the bakery.
Aww.
It's like a real Taste the Nation episode.
I know, right? Going back, me calling my mom, be like, hey, I gotta make something from the family for this potluck episode. I've got, Grand Pepe's old recipes, what should I make of this? And she's like, you should make a meat pie. I'm like, that's not in here. She's like, you have to make a meat pie. Also, backstory, my parents were pretty much grew up together. They've been together since they were young teenagers. She was friends with my dad's sisters. So even though this is mostly on my dad's side, they really grew up together, from very young times. So apparently, every year, either old Pepe or his dad or mama, Meme, someone would make a meat pie. But then the tradition stopped. Sometimes around the 80s, when people grew up and out of the house and, also people started dying, The tradition ended when the old Pepe, old Meme passed away. So that's why I never heard of this even. Now on to slides 8, and 9. How did she veganize this thing? So I made a gluten-free crust from Bakerita. I've included the link to the recipe there, but it's basically, almond flour, tapioca flour, and then I used the new Country Crock vegan butter. It was very good. It was nice and soft, and they come in sticks. I recommend. It was good. Yeah, flax egg. And basically, slide 10, as you can see, I was just like, oh man, I haven't worked with dough since I made those Totino's pizza rolls. So I was a little bit nervous, but oh my god, you guys, like, I channeled Bake Off like nobody's business. See, I rolled out the dough onto the parchment paper, and then I took my rolling pin, put it in front of it, lifted the parchment paper from behind so that the dough would come off onto the rolling pin so I could lift it up and place it into the pie plate, like, and it didn't break, it didn't rip.
Oh, I see you have one of those rolling pins that has the little measurement guides on the end. I somewhat recently bought one of these for myself, but haven't used it yet. Do you like it?
Yeah, and I used that for the Totino's as well, which was definitely needed for that. For this, I really needed to get it like thin, so I ended up taking them off.
Thin and even.
It was quite the challenge. I was like, I don't know how I was doing it. Like, literally, like, the spirit of Bake Off, like, took over my body, and, like, I did things I never did before, and like got that dough onto the pie plate. Yeah, it was really good dough, and it worked. And I recommend, for if you're doing gluten-free vegan baking, check out this website, because like I didn't have any issues with it at all, and I know a lot of people do with gluten-free stuff. So on to the filling. Slide 11. I used the website. It doesn't taste like chicken. The filling for my meat pie is tofu crumbles and mushrooms.
What kind of mushrooms?
I just used the regular white mushrooms that already come sliced in the package. Because it didn't say on here. So you can use probably any mushroom that you like. But it was 16 ounces of mushrooms that I had to chop, so I already went for the ones that were already started to be sliced. I would say you can use whatever mushroom, whatever you want, and it would work. Because basically, as you can see, basically crumble it, and then add it to seasonings. And we used nutritional yeast and some melted vegan butter and soy sauce, and then bake it off. And even at this point, it like tastes like chicken. I know that goes contrary to the name of the website. But my roommate came in, she's like, "Are you making popcorn chicken or something?" And then on the stove top, the mushrooms cooked down with onions. You know you're making some good meaty goodness. Adding some cornstarch and breadcrumbs for, I don't know, what's like when you make a pie and it's like gluey on the inside, you know?
Binding?
Yes, that's the one. With salt, paprika, thyme, pepper, sage, you know, some good Christmassy flavors. Got that in. And then I did like a quote unquote egg wash with aquafaba.
Okay.
And at first I was like, oh no, this pie is looking wet. Like, I put it in there and that thing was like shiny, and I'm like, oh no, I've ruined everything. And then like the edges started to burn a little, and I went, oh no. So then I took it out, put tinfoil around the edges, and so the middle could like do its thing. But like, I was like, this is it, I've ruined it. I've ruined everything. But lo and behold, slide 14, as you already know, it came out perfectly. I am not good with any sort of edge work, whatever. I didn't know what to do. I never made a pie before. Everything came out like, it's messy. It's messy, but it's good.
It's rustic, Justine.
Yes, I did buy little stamps to get the little leaf cutouts on top because that's how it was on the recipe, and I'm like, I'm doing it.
Yeah, that's really cute. I love the little leaf decorations. I think they baked really nicely. It was a smart move to put the tin foil on the edges. You usually have to do that with pie baking, especially if you want the savory inside to be all cooked, but not to overdo your crust. Speaking of channeling Great British Bake Off and having Jabibo problems, were there any soggy bottoms to this?
No, and I was so worried. Dude, I was worried about everything.
Because I don't think you blind baked this, right?
No, I did not. And I thought about it. Like, up until the one I did it, I thought I was going to do it. But then I was just like, no. But then it came out, like, the crust came out flaky, like, deliciously chewy, buttery. And I'm like, I did it. I don't know how. But, like,
It looks great.
Seriously. It's very yummy. It's very juicy. Half of it was gone that day, like. I'd never made it before. I may have to make it every year now because it was definitely like, oh, like this for Thanksgiving instead of like a million things. Why not? You know, stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, like, I think also it's like my ancestors took over as well. I'm like, I can do this. I'm French. I can do this. I can naturally play hockey. I can do this.
French Canadian.
Yes, French Canadian. It's in my blood. There, I've done it. Okay, so the next part didn't go as well. Wherein I make vegan Hermit cookies. And I use the recipe from the site Green Smoothie Gourmet. Yeah, these ones, technically were a bit easier. It's an interesting recipe because this one, we take raisins and we soak them in black coffee for a little bit just to, infuse some coffee flavor. You do get that at the end too because it's very sort of cocoa-y, chocolatey, fruity. Like I said, it's like gingerbready fruitcake. The recipe has you not form them into cookies, but actually bake them sort of loaf shape first after you've chilled them and then cut them after. And that's really where I sort of had some problems with. My dough was really sticky and I had an issue sort of getting them to like the shape I want. And also they do look like big piles of poo.
Yeah, I didn't want to be blue or insult my fellow pals' recipe, but they kind of look like turds.
They do. And I took the picture just to show you, just so you would tell me that they look like turds, because I'm standing there being like, I don't know.
You're like, I was baking, and then I took my dog for a walk, and then this happened, and...
Yeah, so if you are against turd-looking things, don't make these cookies. And then, and then in slide 18, when I cut them, I still wanted to try and cut them somewhat warm, and not all this... This didn't happen with all of them. They came out like sort of crumbly. I couldn't tell when was the good time to cut them. I don't know. I just didn't have a grand old time with them. Some of them came out good shaped, which is the ones I took the pictures of for the final photo. But then some of them were just like really rough around the edges. So they're kind of like biscotti gingerbread fruitcake.
So what's the texture at the end? Is it crunchy like biscotti?
No, I would say it's more like gingerbread in texture. I didn't test to see how long they lasted without refrigeration. I'm sorry.
Is there molasses in this recipe?
Yes, there is.
It looks good. I like a ginger cookie. I like fruit cake. I would try it, although you said it wasn't so great, so maybe I wouldn't.
Yeah, I mean, like, I've made better ginger cookies before, is how I feel.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry I did a disservice. I mean, they're a New England cookie that I've never heard of, so, I mean, I lived in New England. I feel like if they were great, I would have heard of them. Maybe they died out with the turn of the century for a reason.
All those hermits just went off into the woods without their refrigerators and took all the cookies with them.
Indeed. So then, the surprise at the end, slide 20, tradition continues. Right now, right this very moment right now, my parents are making their first meat pie.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
They are texting me pictures as we speak.
that's so cool.
They've never made a meat pie before. They're doing their own version with, hamburger or whatever. And since I was talking to them and researching it, my dad was just like, oh, now I want a meat pie. So that's the end of my tale. It goes full circle.
Well, I give your presentation an A+.
Bravo,
Thank you.
bravo.
Don't need to see me after class. That's all good. Do you think you will continue this tradition yourself? Or are you like, I'm good. I tried it.
I think so. And I would love to make my vegan version for my parents.
Nice.
I think that they would really like it. I mean, I loved it. It was cool. And I want to get better, with my sort of pie making skills. So there we go. I think, yeah. New traditions out of old.
You can share your success with our friend, the Pious. Friend of the podcast.
Friend of the pod. All right, so we're going to go on a quick commercial break. And when we get back, we're all going to find out what Amanda has made. And we're back. So, Amanda, what'd you make?
All right. So I went with my mother's side of the family as well. And I got a recipe that was my great-grandmother's. I had talked with my mom about trying to find something kind of German, because we know my family came from Germany in the mid-1800s. But she mostly, as she said, found things with Jell-O. So I decided to embrace my Midwestern roots. And I made my great-grandmother's, and I'm sending you, this is her handwriting of the recipe, broken Ice Tort.
Ooh!
Which I think is very much a Midwestern salad kind of thing. But it's basically a bunch of Jell-O, different flavors of Jell-O that you make, and then it was lemon, orange, lime, and cherry, and you fix them separately and let them firm up. And then my great-grandmother, her name was Etta Addelaide Goodman, maiden name Schwartz. It's very, very German. So she said to soften it. This is the one part where I had some problems. So I made 4 different kinds of Jell-O. You were supposed to do it with boiling water. I decided I would just boil a whole bunch of water and then split it up. So the first picture is my pot going to boiling with my pile of Jell-O. Also, guys, this is the first time I used our stove.
Yay,
this is how you break it in with 4 types of Jell-O.
4 types of Jell-O, guys. 4 types of Jell-O. So yeah, the first, I did lime, according to the recipe, lime, orange, cherry, and lemon. And then the next part said to soften an envelope of plain gelatin with a 1/4 cup cold water and add 1 cup hot pineapple juice and then allow it to cool.
Good hot pineapple juice.
So
my favorite.
I actually inverted this, and I did warm water and cold pineapple juice. Well, just because that was easier from what I had, because I still had leftover water from my boiled water.
But this is pineapple mango splash from Tropicana.
I could not find pineapple juice. So listeners may hear my voice. I've been sick, so I didn't go to the store. I ordered in, and this was the only thing that I could find that was pineapple juice.
How much pineapple juice is required?
A whole cup. I did the pineapple juice, and then you're supposed to allow it to cool. It didn't firm up quite the way that the other Jell-O did. And I don't know if it's because I put the water in and the gelatin first and then the pineapple juice. Maybe I needed to put the water and pineapple juice together and then the gelatin in. I'm not sure.
Hot water, hot pineapple juice.
It might have been because I did cold pineapple juice.
Yeah.
The next steps, I just ran with it.
Sorry, I still love the phrase hot pineapple juice.
When my mom said
There really
this
is a
to
ring
me,
to it.
I was just like, hot pineapple juice? And then, anyway.
It's interesting because it seems like the recipe is just instructing you to make pineapple Jell-O.
Yes.
Yeah.
That you could have gotten flavored pineapple Jell-O. That could have been a thing that exists now. But
Yeah,
didn't exist
that's what
then.
I was wondering. I was like, why this?
In the
Because
40s
you just
or 50s, yeah.
Yeah. So maybe if you wanted to update it, do they have pineapple Jell-O? I bet they do. You could probably just get that.
They probably do. But so what I ended up doing, because then it says to whip 1 pint of Dream Whip. I just bought Cool Whip.
Yeah, same difference.
Yeah, and I looked at, and they're basically the same thing. So once everything was like cooled, and I let it cool overnight so it was nice and firm, you cut the Jell-O into cubes. You're supposed to fold the Jell-O cubes in with the whipped cream. Very Midwestern, very Midwestern. But then it says to put it all into a dish with the bottom lined with angel food cake. Like, there's no mention of angel food cake until like the second to last thing. And then, it says let it stand and then makes 12 servings. I would say it makes more than 12 servings. There was a lot here.
12 big servings.
I got angel food cake, and angel food cake does not cut very well. It's more of it kind of tears. So I lined the bottom of this pan with it. And then since I had the pineapple Jell-O mix that had kind of firmed up, but not fully, like it was more liquidy, I ended up pouring it over the angel food cake because I thought the angel food cake would also be kind of weirdly just like dry on the bottom. I mean, I know like it won't fully once it sits for a while, but still. So, and it basically looks like a crazy confetti.
I like it.
It looks like broken ice.
Yeah.
It's like broken stained glass or broken popsicles or something. It's very colorful.
And I only used half the amount of the Cool Whip because it said a pint, and I used 8 ounces. Like, in a pint is 16 ounce. It was more than enough. I was like, I do not need more Cool Whip in this.
So how did you serve it? Did you get big dollops of it, or did it firm up enough that you could like slice it?
I just kind of did dollops.
Mm-hmm.
How is the texture?
The texture is like it's very interesting because you have like, I mean, obviously Cool Whip is soft, but then when you have the Jell-O, it's kind of like, well, it's Jell-O, it's like, it's not like hard, but it's not like fully mushy. And then you do have the angel food cake where I do like that I did the juice, like it did soften it, but it wasn't like so soft that it was mushy. It was just like, it added some flavor to the angel food cake. And it wasn't just like purely dry, but it was also it was still like firm enough that it was like a bottom to it.
So did you say that you had this before made by your family?
I had not had this before, but my mom said my great grandma used to make it for her all the time when she was growing up.
Okay.
So this came from your mom, and you said, what should I do? Your mom was like, this recipe, like how my parents did that?
She sent me several, and there are some that I'm thinking about maybe doing later. Butterscotch pie that I'm thinking about doing, but it involved more eggs, and since I had to order stuff in instead of going to the store myself, I just didn't know how I felt about ordering eggs and having them delivered and how they would make it to my house and that. I tried to do stuff that I knew wouldn't break in the bag on the way to the house. But I also thought that one would be more fun to also do with my sisters as like a thing as a family. One of the other reasons I chose this one is it is my great-grandmother's actual handwriting, because some of the other ones, I guess in the 60s and 70s, my grandma started writing them down, and it's in her handwriting. Later, there's like a carrot cake recipe that's in my grandmother's handwriting, and it says Donna's on it because her name was Donna. I don't know, it felt special to do one that was my great-grandmother's in her handwriting that she used to make. My mom seemed to think she started making it in the 50s, but definitely made it for like her grandkids in the 60s and 70s and stuff. But yeah, it was just kind of cool to have. I'm glad that we did this thing of like family recipes. It felt very good to do for, the standpoint of Taste the Nation, but yeah, it was really cool to see all of the old handwriting and the one from her home ec class. Like, there's 2 copies. There's one that was definitely from her class, and it's got like splashes of stuff on it, and she has doodles on the back. And then there's like another one where she wrote it out nicer a couple years later.
That's cute. Would you make this again? Is this a new tradition, or like you said, are you going to try some of the other recipes instead?
I might try some of the other ones. This is definitely one that it takes some time just because there's a lot of like hours of things having to cool down and rest or stuff. But I think it might be fun to do for like a dinner party and have like that 1950s retro style.
Totally.
It's very retro.
It's
Everyone
so
brings
retro.
Jell-O or aspic or something like that.
Yeah, it was just so fun. Yeah, it was just funny because my mom's like because she kept, I'd asked her try to find something German, and then she's like, I just keep finding Jell-O recipes, and I was like, you know what? That's fine. Let's go with it, because that is something like my grandma always made her own versions of like Waldorf salad that had like Jell-O and stuff in it, and so it was kind of interesting to take like this was something my great grandmother made, and I can see how my grandmother made her own versions of this when I was a kid.
Do you think it would work with a different type of cake base besides angel food cake? For some reason, I'm thinking shortcake.
I was thinking pound cake. You could still get that at the store, put some nice slices of pound cake on the bottom, make it kind of more like an icebox cake, sort of.
Yeah, I think either one of those could work. I think it's kind of about having that base that can be sturdy, but you can have like soak up stuff too.
It's very Midwestern. I've definitely had recipes similar to this for sure. Like you were saying, it's fun because the family always puts a spin on it, or a lot of people were making similar recipes, but then you would sort of mix up one ingredient or another. I was thinking maybe instead of this weird make your own pineapple Jell-O, maybe you could just put like canned pineapple in it or something like that. And then you could have still the sort of chunky texture.
Yeah, that is something I was thinking. If I made it again, I don't think I would try to do like the homemade, your own version of pineapple Jell-O, but I left it in there, and did it that way because I thought this is what she had to do, because these were the flavors that she had available to her at that time.
Right. That makes me think of like a good through line of all our recipes are kind of like, use what you have, use what's around you sort of thing. Like mine with like the pie of like, use whatever meats you have, It's I definitely think it's like definitely more a sustainable attitude because people, couldn't, they grew, they get what they had locally,
Yeah, and like they lived on a dairy farm, like she was a farmer's daughter and she married a farmer and they had a dairy farm. So it would make sense that she could go to the grocery and get some gelatin, and then if she wanted something that wasn't just the regular 4 flavors that they had, then she could, do it with the hot pineapple juice. So yeah, I just think it's interesting to see the family stuff and through the generations, because my grandma definitely made stuff where I can see like it had the Cool Whip and it had like a couple different kinds of Jell-O, but then she would put like nuts in it and she like other fruit, and then she'd also do something else with it. So but yeah, it's very Midwestern. I was just like, we're just gonna, I can't find those German recipes, I'm embracing the Midwestern roots. And I do like how colorful it is. I think this would be fun for like a kid's birthday party.
I think kids would love this. I think it'd be good for a potluck. Like you said, it makes a huge amount of food, so it would serve a lot of people.
How is this 12 serving? I'm just like, this is so many servings.
I like it. I like the written out recipe.
Yeah, that's a nice little story.
Juice.
Yeah, and that was what one of the caveats, as I said to my mom, because she has a bunch of the things written down, was it has to be one that's okay that like I share on a podcast on how I did it and I can share it.
If this were a real in-person potluck, we would have a lot of sweet stuff.
Yeah.
I'm glad there's a savory pie to balance it out a little bit.
All right. Well, that concludes Taste the Nation. We've tasted it all.
We did it, guys.
Nothing left to taste.
Now we're going to mosey on over to our back burner. So if you enjoyed Taste the Nation on Hulu, you may enjoy a new show coming to HBO Max. In Take Out with Lisa Ling, award-winning journalist Lisa Ling, whose own family story began in a Chinese restaurant, travels from the bayous of Louisiana to Orange County's Little Saigon. She explores some of the most beloved foods while shining a long overdue spotlight on the contributions Asian Americans have been making to this country, since before the United States was even the United States. Takeout with Lisa Ling is streaming starting January 27th on HBO Max.
Based on the trailer, it seemed very along the lines of Taste the Nation.
But Asian American centric.
My thought was Lisa Ling from Channel 1 News. Shout out to everyone who had to watch Channel 1 News in school, where they would turn it on homeroom. It was like a daily news program by kids for kids, essentially.
We had to watch that.
Yep. And also in the trailer, there's a little bit of Sola El-Whaley.
Yes.
So she's one of the guests. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, I'm going to watch this. I already have a HBO Max subscription. I watch things on there, so sounds good. I'm going to watch it.
Yeah.
Let's keep moseying on down to our shout-outs. First, I want to shout out all the chefs and YouTubers that have been reposting our stories about their videos. We love you. We love that you love that we love you. Been good times. We had a few holiday shenanigans over Instagram on the break. Thank you to Mary, Hey Jen Owen, Summers Rising, Kale Blake, Some Power Pod for celebrating with us, and also thank you to Rachel Casper and Summers Rising for drawing cookies with us, drawing holiday cookies. Shout out to Sunny at Book of Lies podcast for making some dill pesto.
Dill pesto, what?
She's now the reigning pesto queen. Well, she's got scores and scores of dill in her garden. It's gorgeous. Check out her Instagram stories.
Yeah, she also has chickens, which I love. I love her Instagram stories so much.
Shout out to Ravenelle for letting us know that she got Nadia's Time to Eat cookbook for Christmas and made the peanut butter and jelly sheet pan pancake. Also, she noted that this was the first thing she's made from a printed recipe/cookbook.
Ooh.
Wow.
You're doing fabulous! We love you!
We're all big peanut butter jelly fans here.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for getting in touch with us on social media. We'll be back. We already are back active on there. We did take a little holiday break because everybody needs to take a break, rest, recharge. We also want to shout out our Threadless store, podappetit.threadless.com, where you can get merch from us, including ghost cake. We have to mention it. We talked about angel food cake.
We sure did.
We discussed ghost cake today. And you can get a mask, a ghost cake mask.
But double up on it.
So that you don't become a ghost.
Yeah. So everybody's wondering what we're going to be watching next season. Drum roll. We're going to be watching The Chef Show. You know, that guy from that movies and stuff. Okay, you know the movie Chef? Jon Favreau? He's like, I'm going to keep making a show. Get my boy Roy Choi, get other celebrities. We got The Chef Show. So we're starting from episode 1, season 1, volume 1, starting from the beginning. So join us and watch the show with us.
Yeah, we're excited to bring you a new season.
Definitely Avengers involved.
My secret plan to just talk about Marvel movies on every podcast is coming to fruition.
Knew it. Check out Meg's Marvel-inspired drinks on her Instagram.
Oh, yeah, or at whimsysoul.com.
That's all we've got for today. We're glad to be back podcasting in 2022. We'll see you next time. New show. Yay! Bye! Thanks for listening to Pod Appétit Gourmet Takes.
We'd love to hear from you, so find us on Twitter and Instagram at pod_appétit.
And on Facebook at Pod Appétit Podcast.
You can also email us at podappetitpodcast@gmail.com and find all of our episodes on our website, podappetitpodcast.com.
Are you into history that's strange, weird, bizarre, creepy, and crazy?
Maybe even spooky and scary with some monsters and mystery sprinkled in?
Then You Totally Made That Up is the podcast for you. It's just like the name says. We tell you stories that are so unbelievable, they sound like someone must have totally made them up.
Here's the thing though, we don't focus on legends and lore. Our tales are filled with names and dates and all the facts we can find, so they're true stories, even when things try to take a supernatural, paranormal turn.
We've been known to bust myths on occasion, but mostly we just have a good laugh at all the things that can't and can be explained.
Check us out on all your favorite podcast platforms and look for new episodes on Thursdays. We come at you bi-weekly with occasional bite-sized bonus episodes in between.
You can also find us on Twitter at YTMTU Podcast and on Instagram at YouTotallyMadeThatUp.